All right, hi everybody, and welcome back to On the Roof. Today we have a returning guest, one of my favorite guests, and one of the best guitar players going today, Scott Sharrard. Welcome, Scott.
Thanks for having me, man. Where are you?
Well, I'm in my undisclosed loft location. It's down low, and I'll tell you off the record. I can't tell you the exact location.
So we've gone from on the roof to in the loft.
Well, we've all had to make the necessary adjustments, man. That's just the way it is.
Yeah, I think in the bunker might be the next one.
You're better than me. That's a good one, actually. What have you been up to, man?
That's a pretty loaded question, let alone in 2020 in general.
Yeah.
This year was going to be, kind of the year I've been waiting for the last few years. I just last November joined Little Feat after Paul Barrere passed away. And we did several shows. We did some shows in the Northeast, and then we did their festival in Jamaica for about a week. And we were going to be on the road from the summer through the fall, winter. My band was going to be all over the place at a bunch of festivals all over the country and the world. I had a new album I was going to put out. We had just gotten, we were just putting together a major booking agent deal for the first time for my band. And then in March, when the shit hit the fan here in New York City, basically I just called my social media manager, Katie, who helps. She's been my main help in the last few years to just keep things going. Or in the last couple of years anyway. And I said, look, I got to go back to teaching like now, or I'm not going to be able to feed my family. I knew it. I knew live music was gone at least until the fall at that point. This was March.
Yeah, right.
So she got busy and I got busy, and we got on socials, and I went through, I used to teach online a lot, on and off, depending on how busy I was. And teaching people all over the world, actually, on Skype or Zoom.
Great, right?
So I already had the foundation laid, and I've been teaching for True Fire. I've done 3 series for them, and I also have a channel with them. So I kind of reached out to everybody, and I said, look, I'm going teaching full-time. So to answer your question, I know it's a long way around, but after having my entire life taken out from under me, by the end of March, I was teaching 20 hours a week, and it hasn't stopped. So I've just been teaching full time, and did a streaming series from my friend's basement in Woodstock. My family was sheltering in Woodstock over the summer in my mother-in-law's house, and my friend Joni Ellenson has a beautiful house in downtown Woodstock, and I did 5 concerts from her house that were really successful. My friend Chris Pizzolo helped me with that, and Charlie Martinez on the audio. I pre-filmed them, Chris edited them, Charlie mixed them, and then we broadcast them on my Facebook page. Those did great over the summer.
Yeah.
And I've done a few live gigs in the last month in the New York area, mainly in the Hudson Valley, pretty much only in the Hudson Valley, now that I think of it. It feels like I've been farther just because I've been out of the house at all. And I've been raising my 2 little boys. I got an 8 and 3-year-old boy with my wife, she's trained as a pastry chef, and she'd been doing food styling for food photographers. And basically since March, she's become a public school teacher. So, mazel.
Well, I mean, wow. I mean, I don't have time for another question. I mean, that's a lot you got going on. No, I mean, good for you. I mean, it worked out okay. I mean, you seem to have navigated it pretty well.
Well, I've been in the music business since I was a teenager. So, and my wife also, we've been together 20 years, and she's been self-employed through that whole thing, first as a photographer, then as a pastry chef. So we're both self-employed. So our default setting is the rug is going to be ripped out from under us every morning.
Yeah.
So when it comes to dealing with something like a pandemic, it's like, okay, well, this is the usual. Now I have to do something else to
It's
figure
like
out how the hell
a
it's being
Wednesday.
built. Yeah.
Yeah.
I mean, think about, me losing Gregg a few years back. That was almost a decade with him. Um, and losing him was a complete do-over, and then doing my own solo career full time for the first time in my life was a do-over, and then joining Little Feat. It's another do-over. And then of
Yeah.
course I'm producing records, I'm writing with people, I'm always doing 5 jobs at once. I mean, that's what it is to be a musician now. So basically what I did when the pandemic struck in New York City is I just said, to hell with it. I'm just going to teach full time. And lo and behold, I mean, there is no music business now. All the agents are furloughed. All the promoters are closed. Everyone's shut. It's a complete industry-wide shutdown. And a lot of people won't be back at the table again, on the business
Yeah.
side. So it's getting crazy.
I think that's, whatever this is going to evolve into, nobody really knows. It's like, it's still, we have to wait to see what the new world is going to be. Some of us will be lucky and maybe find ourselves in a good position, and maybe not. And there's no way of telling where that's going to be right now. A guy like yourself, you'll always land on your feet, no matter what happens. You got a lot of
Well, I
talents.
appreciate the vote of confidence. I am a Capricorn, and I am one of these Type A musicians. So, I had to learn very early on that I wasn't going to get the golden ticket in music. So
Yeah, there'd be some work involved.
I figured that out pretty early, my early 20s when I got to New York City, which was the early 2000s. I mean, that was pretty much the end of the record business. I got a front row seat for the end of the tastemakers, the end of the opportunity to go in a recording studio and have a budget, the end of selling records, and then of course the fallout from that is the end of managers and distributors and people who show up to get skin in the game. There was no more, I watched skin in the game evaporate before my eyes. And it all came down on the artist in the end, because the business, the entire record business turned against their customers. Instead of doing what, people like Netflix and now all the major networks have done, which is to serve their customers and charge them subscriptions, the music business decided, fuck it, we'll start suing people, keep trying to sell these discs, and let's take out Napster, let's F with everybody. And then of course when Spotify came in and offered the worst deal in the history of intellectual property, the major corporate record labels were only happy enough to take their stock options in Spotify and leave all the creators twisting in the wind with the worst possible royalty rate. So that's basically where we're at. We didn't unionize or strengthen our unions in the face of the technology change, the way actors and TV writers have always been so smart with their unions. And they've always used their power to negotiate. We didn't do any of that. So, for me, this current sort of music business super apocalypse is just desserts, really, because, if you look at it, the live ticket in my form of music, I have to be very clear. Like in playing sort of, I guess what I could just call it rock and roll, but some people call it Americana, some people call it classic rock, some people even call it blues, which I still don't understand because I'm not a blues man, I'm not a blues artist, but I play as many blues-based songs as the Stones or Led Zeppelin or Little Feat or the Allman Brothers did, but they're not blues bands. But my point is that in that arena of music, the live ticket dollar was all we had left before this came. And this particular health crisis, the first thing that gets completely decimated is live ticket dollars. So there is no money in my genre of music right now. The royalties are nothing for everybody.
Yeah.
So like you said, what do you build out of this? Well, I guess we rebuild the industry. The thing is it'll be interesting to see where booking agents and promoters come in that, because I did notice that the booking agents and the promoters have just walked away from the table at this point. One second.
Yeah.
So that's an interesting position that they've put themselves in, and I think you'll see the booking agents and the managers and the promoters who are ubiquitous, who have the biggest artists in the world, they'll be back, but maybe not the agents, right? Maybe just the managers and the promoters. I don't know. You know what?
Who does really though? Like, isn't that the quagmire of it all?
Well,
nobody really knows. We
may see a complete reshuffle of the power structure in the music industry. We may. Now, then again, the people who were working in music at this point before this happened most of them are not the sharpest tools in the shed. There's a lot of short money hustling going on in music these days. You're not in the world of Mo Austin and Ahmet Ertegun anymore. That ship has sailed. I mean, those guys were dealing with $1 million deals, and then they wanted to have Joni Mitchell, they wanted to have Ray Charles, they wanted to have Little Feat, they wanted to have, with Ahmet, it's like everything.
And bidding wars, Yetnikov and Clive Davis too. I mean, all of them were like bidding for.
Yeah, that's a whole nother game. I mean, and then they had these great A&R guys, Mo Austin with Lenny Waronker and Ted Templeman, who were also staff producers, and then you had that was all the Warner Brothers family. And then with Atlantic, Jerry Wexler and Arif Mardan and all these people who are Joel Dorn. I mean, all these incredible human beings who were just curators. They were tastemakers. I mean, those human beings don't exist in music. So it'll be interesting when music turns back on to see if the tastemakers appear again. I know that they exist. Tastemakers definitely exist in comedy, electronic dance music. There are all these genres, hip hop. There's all these great genres right now that are very vital, with great tastemakers developing people's careers and artists developing their own careers. But in my arena, it's sadly underperforming financially, and as a result, it's been just kind of twisting in the wind with sort of like, I kind of look at it like classical and jazz music, where the best and most profitable shows are pretty much cover shows or tribute shows.
It's as you say that, I was thinking back, to Gregg, who you spent so much time with. There was a time in his career where he was almost like left out. If you remember, him and Stevie Ray put that tour together, and that just kind of, Stevie Ray couldn't even find his niche. As talented as he was, it was like this music had kind of like, it was kind of not getting, it didn't have from the industry, it didn't have that power that it once had. It was kind of going into that new wave age, and I'm talking about the late '80s, the mid '80s.
This is anecdotal, Scott, but I mean, my dad's a singer-songwriter, guitar player, and I grew up with musicians, and I grew up going to concerts all the time, and the bands I saw when I was a kid, and I mean when I was 7, 8, 9, 10, all the way through my teens, Little Feat and the Allman Brothers were two of them. I mean, they were my greatest inspirations. They were my Beatles and Rolling Stones, Little Feat and the Allman Brothers. And they were my compass for how to navigate my love for Muddy Waters, John Coltrane, Hank Williams, all these conceivably disparate styles of music, They were like a salon to bring all those tributaries together. And they were playing sheds. They were selling out 5,000, 6,000 seat. They were on multiple artist bills, but they were selling out a lot of tickets. And also, I remember them and Stevie Ray and Robert Cray and Eric Clapton and Bonnie Raitt on TV all the time. They were on VH1 and on the radio all the time.
I'm just saying, like, commercially, like, as far as MTV had come in and just music was changing. The whole scene was changing.
Yeah, but
they did bring
that music, Scott, it'll stand the test of time forever.
No doubt. No, I'm not. Listen, I would never dispute that. It's my favorite music as well. But what I'm just saying was that sometimes there's ebbs and flows in what's just like commercially popular. It doesn't mean anything to the quality of the sound and what's going to be inspirational to somebody like you.
What will we give now to have the Talking Heads or Prince? I mean, if they came out now, they would be the saviors of the entire music scene.
Sure.
And there were tons of artists like that had videos on MTV. Michael Jackson, with Quincy Jones producing and the best musicians in the music business being hired and put on the records and the tours. I mean, this is a whole nother diaspora of reality from what we're dealing with music now. Okay?
Yeah.
It's a whole nother, it's just, this is when, from 76 was the absolute peak of record sales, that's the year, coincidentally, I was born. In 76, 77, record sales were the number one grossing form of entertainment, more than films.
Mm-hmm.
And that's just the records.
Yeah.
The tours were the icing on the cake at that point. And when you had bands like Led Zeppelin or the Eagles, who had amazing managers who would turn the promoters upside down, and get all their money, I mean, you're talking about big, 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 big fucking money. You're talking, these guys were like Kanye West back in their day.
Yeah.
But now this whole thing is turned upside down, where it's like, it's about how many followers you have on social media or TikTok or Instagram. Facebook. Facebook's more for people my age, Instagram is more for people in their 20s and 30s, and TikTok now is for the teens. And those platforms are the platforms that decide. And honestly, you're probably going to get a corporate endorsement and a check written for you before you get a record deal.
Yeah.
And it's probably going to be for, I don't know, knitting socks or making brownies. With like 1-minute videos. I mean, it's just, it's like, what would Ahmet Ertegun say now if he looked at this? I mean, he would be like, music's over, do something else. I mean, that's what a lot of the older guys have said to me over the years, even 10 years ago. The idea was, I would never go into this business now. The things you guys have to put up with, it doesn't make any sense. None of it has anything to do with the creative process.
You're a lifer. That's how I see you. Am I wrong? Like, this is in your blood. It was in your blood, and it's not going anywhere.
I mean, I'm a man out of time who's become a consigliere, I would say.
Yeah.
So I was born 70 years old, pretty much.
Yeah.
And I've been hanging out with my heroes since I was a little kid. My first one was when I was 15. I spent a month playing gigs, recording, and jamming with Buddy Miles. And Jimi Hendrix was my number one inspiration.
Yeah.
So doing that at 15, and then meeting the great soul singer Harvey Scales and getting to play with him, and then getting to meet Hubert Sumlin and Pinetop Perkins and jam with them. This was
and you were a kid. You're in high school.
Yeah, it was all in my high school, and I was going to Milwaukee High School of the Arts, which, we'd have guest professors were guys like Gerald Cannon, who was playing bass with Elvin Jones from John Coltrane's group, and Mel Ryan, who was the organist with Wes Montgomery, I got to work with a lot. So a lot of different mentors from jazz, blues, and soul music. And then my friends and peers who I went on to form the Chesterfields with, Sean Dixon, Katie Foffel, some of the other people who were at High School of the Arts with me, who've all gone on to have these great careers in music. They were my classmates at this school. So I had my peers and I had my mentors, and that was my formative teenage years. And that kind of set me up for this whole journey especially with Gregg Allman, and now with Little Feat, where I've noticed with Little Feat, it's like so many of the skills that I had to apply with working with Gregg are coming into play with these guys as well, because they're all from the same generation. And ironically, of course, they're all friends and all fans of each other. And Bill also has always played. Bill Payne from Little Feat has always played with the Doobie Brothers on all their records, and he still plays with them. Gregg and the Doobies used to tour together. I've gotten to be close with them. The Doobie Brothers have taken Mark Quinones and our front of house engineer and our tour manager from Gregg Allman. So all these worlds kind of converge.
Collide, yeah.
Years. And it's become like one big family. And it's interesting because, not that I try to remind any of these guys of this on a regular basis, but they're all my dad's age. And these were always my favorite bands. I never, there's only a handful of bands I related to who were newer anyway when I was growing up. Two of them were Chris Whitley and Jeff Buckley. To me, they were the only equivalents talent wise to what these legacy artists were. So I didn't have much to go off of in terms of my peers or people who were 10, 20 years older than me. So I had to go to my dad's generation to really get the inspiration.
Was your first gig with Gregg at Westbury Music Fair?
At the stage that goes on it's on a dolly or something.
Yeah,
they call it in the round.
Yeah, because I was at this show, and I think this was the night I was told that the night you joined the band.
It would have been December 2008.
Yeah, yeah. And Honey Tribe opened up. Devin.
You know what's interesting? That was I think it was December 27th, and my birthday is December 28th. So I remember celebrating my birthday, my 31st birthday that night on the bus.
I remember telling you this once before. So you got a charmed life, my man. Yeah, I mean, you've been in. I mean, a lot of nice things have evolved. That's what I mean by that. Not that everything isn't well earned. Obviously, it is. But I mean, it's a lot of really great things. You know that you wind up in these great positions. I think, right?
Well, I mean, to say I've been fortunate musically would be the ultimate understatement. I mean, just my teenage years alone and how that set me up. I mean, and then, my two favorite bands of all time, working with Gregg's band and sort of bringing his vision about from his brothers, what he would call his brother's band, the Allman Brothers band. And now with Whittle Feet, these guys have brought me in as a member of the band. And I can't tell you what it means to sing, play guitar, write songs, and be in Whittle Feet, because that was,
I can imagine.
Lowell George was my dude. Yeah. Like, to me, Duane Allman, Gregg Allman, Jimi Hendrix, they were like unattainable. But when I heard Lowell and I saw, I was like a fat, awkward, middle-class white kid. And when I heard Whittle Feet and I saw Lowell George, I said, wait a second, there's a world where, Hunter S. Thompson and Muddy Waters coexist. And I was already into those things, and then to look at Lowell and be like, here's this overweight white dude playing the shit out of the slide guitar.
Damn, he was
right,
good.
And singing his heart out and writing these amazing, amazing songs. Because that's the main thing with all these bands is the songs. It's not about the jams. And I personally think now that I've lifted up the hood with Whittle Feet for real. It's been so gratifying to know that these guys are still writing great songs, that they still think the songs are the main engine, even though they can all play their asses off and jam 20 minutes with the best of it. Mm-hmm. That's always been my Northern Star, is the material. That was something that Gregg and I had very much in common, and I think the jams are something that are supposed to happen later. I think that's gotten reversed in my world. A lot of people show up to hear a guitar solo, and I think that's really misguided. I don't think Jimi Hendrix or Stevie Ray Vaughan thought that way.
Yeah. Well, congratulations on joining Little Feat. I mean, that is they are great. And I mean, you're a perfect fit. I've seen you so many times live. In every show you do, the energy is noticeably special in the venue every single time.
Wow, that's a lot, Scott. I appreciate that, man.
Dude, that's you.
It feels that way backstage. I mean, it's, Hal Wilner just passed away. Hal Wilner, the great concert producer. He was also the music supervisor for Saturday Night Live for forever. Okay. But Hal used to do this show. Oh my gosh, I forgot the name of it. It was with Jules Holland and Dave Sanborn. I think it was called Night Music or something like that. Anyway, when I was a kid, I used to stay up to watch it. It's all over YouTube. And Hal was the producer of the show. And Hal used to do, and I remember being very young and staying up late to watch this show. And I saw them all live on TV. They used to come on at like midnight on some off-brand cable channel. And they used to do these shows where there's this performance, and you should watch this as soon as we're done if you've never seen it. Hal had this incredible house band with like Omar Hakim and Robin Ford and Don Elias and all these incredible session musicians. And he had like Pee Wee Atkinson singing backup and all these incredible singers. And he had Leonard Cohen and Sonny Rollins. And they do this Leonard Cohen song with Sonny playing a solo. And I remember seeing that when I was a kid. And that whole show was incredible. He would do Hal would think of all these different combinations of talent. And of course, that was a page he took from, Ahmet Ertegun and Jerry Wexler and Mo Austin. We're back to the tastemakers, right? It's like these guys had these ways of taking American music and just codifying it into one beautiful sound. And I've always looked at that as like rock and roll. Like that performance of Leonard Cohen and Sonny Rollins together, um, it's the most perfect expression of what America is at its best, or the Americas, since Leonard's from Canada. But the point is that collaboration, that spirit of collaboration across generations, across races, across genders, and the mutual sort of the all boats rise theory of it all, where
Yeah.
you can go toe to toe and it brings the whole band and all the musicians and the show and the audience up together. Those are my favorite experiences. And of my whole life, it's always been like that. It's always been about being part of a community. And when I do those bigger shows we do, like I'm assuming you're talking about like the Irving Plaza, Brooklyn Bowl stuff, like the Dwayne Allman, Muscle Shoals shows and
Dude,
stuff like
that one in particular, there were moments in that show that were just, I've been at a lot of all-time great shows. And I mean all-time in the history
I'll
of
bet.
fucking
Yeah.
concerts, right? There was a couple of moments in that show. I gauge, this is my gauge. If I get, and a feeling has to happen to me, when it just comes over me, there's like no other fucking place in this planet I would want to be than right where I am. When that happens, that's like it. Like, it's just, that's it. That's peace. That's nirvana. That's everything that you could want out of being at an event. And I mean, Lisa Fisher, when she did the Wild Horses thing, that was one of those, man, that was sweet.
She's been performing that for years, and that show is the Dwayne Allman at Muscle Shoals show. So, the whole idea of that show was we were celebrating Fame Studios and Dwayne Allman's work there. And then we were also stretching it out a little bit in places. Depends. We've done it like 3 times. And some of the shows I've cheated a little bit. And I've done songs off Southern Blood or my solo record, which were also cut at Fame in Muscle Shoals. But Lisa had she's been doing that version of Wild Horses for a long time. And you can look up Lisa Fisher Wild Horses on YouTube to hear it. And she asked me if she could sing that song because the Rolling Stones cut it at Muscle Shoals Sound. So that was my one thing about that. I was like, Lisa, I think you got this in there by a hair. So we'll go for it.
By default. Yeah. That was, and you and Tash killed it that night, Vernon Reid. That was just a conglomeration again of all of these different great talented musicians. Dwayne Betts, I mean, on and on. You just had everybody up there. Everybody was cool and ripping. Like like you said, the game was elevated.
My friend Danny Melnick produced that show, and I brought in Danny right away because Danny is just, he worked for I think 25 years or so at the Newport Jazz and Folk Festival with George Wein as a promoter. And he also runs Saratoga Jazz Festival and the Rochester Jazz Festival. And of course, all those festivals are not jazz festivals anymore. They have all kinds of American roots music. And Danny is I was just talking to him earlier today. He's an old friend and he's a tastemaker. He's a real tastemaker. But he's mainly a concert promoter, and he has these amazing relationships with all these musicians. And I went to Danny and I said, look, I've got people I can bring to the table like Tash and Dwayne Betts. Can you help me? Like, I've never worked with Vernon Reid or Lisa Fisher before. Do you think you could contact them?
So you had them in mind, and then he helped you contact them and actually reach out?
He steered me towards them, too. It was kind of a combination.
That's cool, yeah.
It was a collaboration. And Danny, Danny is one of those rare figures in my business whose word is bond. So when artists found out Danny was involved, they got excited. And then I would speak to them on the phone or communicate with them or their people. And then we would elevate the excitement even more. And then, of course, by the time you get on set, you've got this scene backstage. And this is really what I live for. Is you get backstage and you got Dwayne Betts meeting Vernon for the first time. And then you got Vernon and Lisa haven't seen each other in so many years. And they're like so psyched they've done all these collaborations over the years and they're so psyched to be back together. And the whole day from the sound check rehearsal to getting ready for the show. And then when the show happens, the party goes from backstage onto the stage. Yeah. And it's, that's as the musical director, I see my job as it's a combination of keeping everything on track and on schedule and also preserving the mojo so that when the audience comes, the best shows for musicians and audiences, this is a mutual thing, is to feel like they are one organism.
Yeah.
And that's always my goal with every show I play. But with the multi-artist shows, I want it for the audience to feel like what it is to be a musician and how special the tribalism of the musician and the music lover is, and how essential they are to each other to preserve music. It's about letting the ego go.
Yep.
And then in the moment on stage, we get to step to each other, right? That's the ego asserting itself. And a great musician knows how to assert their ego and then pull back in the humility of the moment.
That's yes, that's magic.
And that's I live for that. You don't understand. I've spent my whole life living for that. I live to be part of the tribe and to surround myself with people who are better than me. And that goes straight through to my production people. Like when you see those shows where we have like real budgets, I mean, I bring in my production, my producing engineer partner for over 20 years, Charlie Martinez. He's mixed for everybody. The Stones, he does front of house for Steely Dan. I bring him in to mix the front of house sound. I got Michael LeBeau doing the stage management, who's just unbelievable right hand.
He's the man. He's the man.
He's incredible, man.
He's the man, no doubt.
And Michael, sometimes I've done shows where I've only had a budget to get him with a couple local hands. And he's back there. He's tuning freaking Vern Reed's guitar.
Yeah, man.
He's getting a drink for somebody in the dressing room. He's letting somebody in with a wristband. Like, these guys are like unbelievable.
That guy's vital, right, to what you do?
Yeah. And, Danny Melnick, he came down to the show. He's backstage. Everyone loves him. It's like people, when musicians feel safe and embraced, they can express themselves, they can take chances, and they can step back and appreciate what's around them. And that's... dude, those shows are so much work, Scott. I could never tell you how many hours I spend on them. I mean, if I was to ever figure out what I got paid to how many hours I spent on those shows, I'm probably making $5 an hour. Seriously. I mean, it just, but it's a labor of love, and that's why I only do a couple of them a year.
That's going to stay with everyone that was there. Like those moments stick. They're not going anywhere. There's shows and there's shows, and that was one of the special shows. I mean, that was everything, the whole production, the whole thing, it was just right. It was just tastefully done. And I for me, it's the energy. The energy is like really, to me, it's like old school energy. It's, you don't get it, man. It's just not, it doesn't happen. It used to happen a lot more often, I think, when things were what they were like. But now, like you said earlier, the difference in the whole atmosphere around the whole industry and live events is different, and that it suffers because of it, but not that night.
Well, you've also got the other problem you have now is, I just listened to this great interview with one of my absolute spiritual mentors, someone I've never properly met, but just I adore everything she does, is Patti Smith. And she was on Mark Maron's podcast.
She's she's great.
And I recommend anyone listen to the WTF, Mark Maron WTF podcast with Patti Smith interview. I just finished it this morning. But she was talking about, and she actually mentioned the Allman Brothers in the interview. It was really cool. She was talking about hanging back in the day in the Village and going to the Fillmore East and then hanging out at bars, and how all these bands were around that played all these seemingly different styles of music, but they all wore the same clothes. They all had the same accent, and they were all just like in awe of everything. Like I was saying earlier, from Hunter S. Thompson to Muddy Waters, like there was a cultural aesthetic and a movement that went with what they did. And it was a renaissance. And I think I look at my life as post-Renaissance living, right? It's kind of like Prince is sort of the last genius through the door. And after that, it's all post-Renaissance. It's kind of, so that's why we all wear the same clothes they wear, and we all play the same instruments, and we use the same chord progressions. And I mean, even look at all these musicians in their 20s now who are coming out. They're all playing tube amps and guitars from the 60s. They're all wearing the clothes from the 60s. They're wearing the hats and the jewelry, and they're using the same chord progressions. And I mean, can you imagine if Jimi Hendrix had done that? I mean, everything Hendrix was doing was brand new.
Thank God that didn't happen.
Right? But if that was, I mean, for Hendrix, he would have been, playing Bix Beiderbecke music on a trumpet or something. I mean, that's like the equivalent in terms of the time gulf.
Yeah.
But that shows you how impactful. It's kind of like being an oil painter is another analogy where, if you're painting with oils, you're kind of stuck with, you know, you're kind of stuck with the last Renaissance. I mean, are you going to get anywhere beyond Cubism, really? I mean, yeah, there's Jackson Pollock. There's a few people who came up with, abstract work that's interesting. But, what do people have on their mugs at work? It's like a Van Gogh or a Cezanne, And that's pretty much where oil painting ended. And I think for rock, it's becoming the same thing,
Did you happen to see this just the other day? Patti Smith did an impromptu People Have the Power on 8th Avenue somewhere, like in the middle of the street. that was just so cool. But it's Patti Smith. Again, she carries with her the esteem of being real and true throughout, no matter what. If anybody bucked the trends, she certainly did.
She's one of them. I mean, and she's also very, she has a lot of talents. I mean, she's really a poet, and her memoirs are like novels, and her newest book is pretty much, it's a very interesting type of novel. It's called Year of the Monkey, and she's been out promoting it recently. I think that's why she was on Mark Maron's show. But it's a fantastic piece, and it's autobiographical. I mean, I guess you could say. I mean, because it goes from sort of fictional dream sequences to real memories of from her own life. It's a very interesting way to write a novel.
I wanted to ask you about what you're doing personally with your music. I mean, you came out with an album recently, and when I watched you perform that, it appears to me like you're really finding not your stride. It's not like you're finding your stride. You're finding like a new stride, like a really keen level of you as a singer and a player, like really coming all the way, finding like a maximum. As far as chasing your potential as an artist, do you feel like your game has been elevated as of like each piece of work that you put out and how much you put into it and all the experience that you bring into each new project?
I mean, I always try to elevate my game. I'm always practicing. I'm always learning. I'm always trying to understand deeper levels of music and humanity too. I'm a father. I'm a husband. That has a massive influence on both the amount of time I can spend on music, but also the emotion I put into it. So it's kind of a trade-off, right? I have 5 solo albums that are out, on Spotify and iTunes. I don't think I sell any of them physically anymore. And my 6th one has been done for months. It was just a couple songs that need a few overdubs, but I mean, it's basically done. And we've probably been playing about half the album live for the last year or so, and I think it's the best group of songs I've ever written. I mean, I know it is, it's the strongest, most personal record I've ever made. I just don't know what to do with it at this point. We were just getting a plan with, like I was telling you, the live ticket dollar being the main way to raise money for a band. We had just gotten a major booking agent to agree to work with us, and those agents are furloughed. They don't have jobs anymore. So, I don't know what the sense is for someone like me to put a solo album out as now. But I am working with Little Feat on a new Little Feat album.
Yeah, how's that going?
Great. We're about 3 tracks into it. We did a remake of the classic Long Distance Love, which is one of my favorite songs of all time. We did a video for it that we put out a couple months back, and I was really happy with that. We got Amy Helm to come in and sing on it with me, and I got to sing the song and obviously play the slide parts on it. That was like a total dream come true because it's, one of Lowell George's best songs. So that was kind of like a love letter to the fans, really, to say, look, we're still here. And we got Tony Leone in the band on drums, who's one of my favorite musicians for many years. We're old friends from the New York scene. Tony from Chris Robinson Brotherhood, and he was in that band with Marcus King and Chris Robinson that was out for a little while.
Right.
Tony's he was in Ola Bell with Amy Helm. He's just an incredible musician, great singer too, and drummer. So having Tony in Little Feat has been also a brand new development and has really put a shot in the arm of the band, because Tony is an absolute virtuoso drummer who can play anything, and he's really pushing the band too now. So we've been doing these tracks, and Bill has some great new songs he's written. One of them is in the can now, and we're working on finishing that with some backing vocals and horns. Um, and I've written a few songs recently for the band, and I'm just passing along demos, and I've got some older songs from my solo records I've been passing along, and I know Fred Tackett is writing some music, and so we're really still in the exploratory phase of that. But, like I said, we've cut 3 tracks, and to me, they hold up. I mean, the Long Distance Love, again, you can look that up. It's on YouTube now, and it's obviously on all the Little Feat pages. I mean, as someone who's been listening to that song since I was a little kid, I was very intimidated about singing it and us recutting it. But I feel like it stands up as a great tribute to the band, and I also feel like it really, is a good way to get back in touch with everyone to say, look, we're not afraid to play. They hadn't played the song in I don't know how many years. I don't think they'd played the song since Lowell was alive, as far as I know, because nobody else was trying to sing it. So this was our way of kind of saying, look, now we're gonna do some, I'm gonna sing some Lowell George songs. We're gonna bring that stuff back. We're gonna try to breathe some new life into the old catalog, and the next single we're gonna do is one of Bill's songs, Bill Payne, and it's an amazing song, man. I can't wait for you to hear the song. It's so timely. And it's a beautiful track. And I think when that comes out, people are going to get to hear, oh, wow, this is new Little Feat music. And I think it'll be a great sort of second shot across the bow to say, oh, wait a second, these guys aren't just redoing the classics. They're also, moving into some new territory.
You played with them in Huntington, right? Or were you opening for them?
Oh, yeah, no, Huntington was my first gig. And I was subbing for Paul Barrere. And that was the day that Paul died.
What is that like to, for you to come into a family like that at such a time when there's such a personal loss for them? What was that moment like for you to be on the stage with them at that time?
Well, I got to tell you, Scott, I'm not a religious person, but I am someone who believes in energy. I think musicians work with energy. It's kind of like being a shaman in a tribe or something. It's like being a medicine man or a witch doctor, being a musician. So you're always working with energy, each other's energy, the audience's energy. An electric guitar, there was a sound healer one time who heard me play, and he said, he was standing on stage with me, and he turned to me afterwards and he said, I've never stood in front of an amplifier like that. And he goes, that's either doing amazing things to you or horrible things to you. He's like, that amount of energy that's coming out of that.
Yeah.
And that moment when I was at soundcheck to meet Kenny Gradney and Fred Tackett and the rest of the band, I already knew the horn players really well. They're Lee Von Helm's horn section. So Jay Collins was in there, Steve Bernstein, Eric Lawrence. I mean, I've known them for years. They're good buddies, and I love all of them. And I knew Bill Payne a little bit. We'd been talking on the phone a lot, and we had jammed with the Doobie Brothers several times, so we had familiarity with each other. But to meet Fred and Kenny and Sam Clayton for the first time when they had just lost their friend and band, and co-band leader or band member, I really called upon Gregg. I mean, that's what I do in these moments. I mean, I still have dreams where Gregg shows up where we're at a gig. And I remember them perfectly next day. And there's not a time I go on stage and I don't think about him. Since he's been gone, it's never happened. I've always thought about him at least once on stage. And that night when Paul had just passed away, I remember kind of taking a breath, waiting a beat before I met everybody as they were walking in. And I was just like, Gregg, you got to get me through this.
Yeah.
If you're out there and you're welcoming Paul into the jam session, like, please just, give me the strength to get through this goddamn experience. 'Cause, I was thinking about all the crucibles he and I had been together where he wasn't supposed to live and we had to go play a gig or, writing those songs. I mean, it was always just on a hair's breadth. So, and being with Gregg, I mean, he treated us like family. And these guys, man, they came in, and it was like seamless to how it was working with Gregg in terms of the vibe. Right away, they wanted to jam. They came in, they were like, let's play. And we ran through about 5 songs, and at the end, they just went, this guy's really good. And I was like, okay. Went downstairs. We get ready to go on stage to play with Little Feat. My first gig with them. The only rehearsal I've had is running through those 5 songs. No other rehearsal.
Wow.
And Bill Payne turns to me and he goes, Scott, we're going to go on here. I got to make an announcement. I got to tell the fans that Paul's passed away. We haven't announced it yet. So basically, we walked on stage, packed house. Bill gets on the mic and he says, Paul Barrere's passed away. And it was basically the way it felt inside for me was Paul Barrere, the legendary great guitar player, singer, songwriter of Little Feat, has passed away. Ladies and gentlemen, here's Scott Sharrard. So for me, it just felt like,
and no pressure.
It felt horrible.
Yeah.
At first, and then the music started, and I noticed that I was smiling ear to ear, and everybody on stage was. And when I got to the end of the gig, Bill Payne walked across the stage, and he grabbed me by the shoulder, and he goes, he said something to the effect of, motherfucker, you do know our music, And I went down stage after the gig, and they were like, you're in the band. That's it. You're in. Because prepping the gig, Bill and I were talking on the phone a lot, and he's like, look, Scott, I know you're a fan. Like, we've had other guitar players play with us who say they're fans of our music. Like, Little Feat music is really complicated. You got to make sure. I was like, Bill, you don't understand. You're my favorite band of all time. And as a lifelong musician, if I fuck this up, I'm never going to forgive myself. Ever. So I said, I am not going to fuck this up. I promise you. And I told him that many times. And then when the crucible of Paul dying the day the show happened, I just said, that's it. I'm fucking lighting this place up. I'm lighting this shit up. I got to do it. Because
it's cool.
You got to step in. And then, Jamaica was sort of another sort of affirmation, because we did 2 shows. We did that show for Paul, the day Paul died, and then we did a show the day after, and that show was also phenomenal. And then we went to Jamaica, and that was kind of like I got to meet all the hardcore Little Feat fans, and they embraced me, man. And I was lucky. A lot of them knew me already from Gregg's band or my band. And it turned out we had all our fans were crossed over from all 3 acts, from the Gregg Allman band, from my band, and from Little Feat. They were the same sort of tribe. So it was just kismet in a way. And of course the guys in Little Feat saw that, and they were like, you're one of us, man. Like, what do we do now? By the end of it, we were all in a band. We were all asking each other, what do we do now? This is great.
Are we going to do gigs?
Yeah. Well, then March, and, here we are.
Yeah. Scott, I'm really grateful for your time, and I know you're so busy, so I don't want to, hijack you for the rest of the day. But as you go forward, do you have any plan, or is it still wait and see?
There's no plan. The music industry is gone. So yeah. I'm a full-time music teacher, and anyone who's watching this I teach not only guitar, which I'm known more for, but I'm also teaching voice, and I'm teaching a lot of songwriting students. Because I've had a long history as being a songwriter and collaborating, and so, it's really, for me, it's all about doing the teaching thing for now, because the venue thing, bro, we're going into the winter up here. I don't know what kind of acid trip people are dealing with in Florida, because I know their governor doesn't believe the disease exists. But up here in the north, in the northeast, we're about to go into, if there's a second wave, it's going to be scorched earth. And even if there's no second wave, I don't see. You think gigs are going to be happening outside in January in the Hudson Valley? I don't want to be playing those gigs.
No, yeah, they're not. You gotta have like. I was at an open air gig, Colin Quinn and Gary Goldman up at Ridgefield, Connecticut.
Yeah,
under a tent and everything, but there's no walls. Part of making that possible is having it open. So once it gets cold, where's that going?
Yeah, I have a gig. I should plug this. November 7th at Shanghai Jazz in New Jersey. They have a stage built outside. And I have some fans who actually underwrote my band to do the performance. But it is going to be public I think they can only sell like 75 or 100 tickets.
Yeah.
So that's Saturday, November 7th at Shanghai Jazz, and I think that's going to be it for us. After that, I don't know, man. I might just teach for the winter. I may bring the streaming show back. We shot a 6-camera pro audio video concert of my band at the Bearsville Theater a month ago, and I'm having that mixed right now. So we'll probably release that maybe on Nugs TV or Stage It or one of those. Once it gets really cold in December or January, I'll probably release that with like a ticket, that you can get online. And maybe we'll film another one of those inside somewhere at some point.
The first time I saw you as a solo artist was, I think it was the day of the inauguration with Connor Kennedy, when you did Animals.
Oh my God, that was a great show.
That's my introduction to you. That was sick.
That was
sick.
I went deep on that show. That was tough, man. I mean, that was...
And you never played that album before? Like you weren't familiar with it, or Connor wasn't?
We did rehearse. We don't always have time to rehearse. Like that Dwayne Allman Muscle Shoals show, we rehearsed the day of show for 3 hours, and that was it. But that Animals record, we actually got together at Rich Pagano's space, and we did the whole album twice. Like,
it's one of my favorite albums all time too. I just love that.
It's very difficult. I mean, Dogs Alone is like it's the Stravinsky piece of rock and roll or something. So we got it together, and oh my God, I was so proud of that show. I mean, I put a lot of work. I mean, I was really I know that I mean, where politics have gone from then to now. I mean, it's just...
We weren't feeling good that day, I'll tell you that, and it's not gotten any better.
I mean, really, I remember that, that inauguration was the first one since John F. Kennedy to not have a poet write a poem for the inauguration.
Right.
And there was, I think, who was the first poet at the first inauguration? I think at JFK's inauguration. And I thought, man, we've got to have poetry, and we've got to have meaning to this that really sort of prepares us for what we're going to be going into. And we kind of sailed through those first 3 years, and then when this health crisis, which by the way is a consequence of global warming, I mean, all these things are a consequence of global warming,
no doubt.
And when this health pandemic finally hit, it was the thing we were all afraid of. But at the end of the day, let's hope next time you and I speak that we're in a world with new leadership all around. New leadership.
No lips to God's ears, man.
New leadership in this country, new leadership at the WHO, just a reunified world.
Yes.
We can't live without each other, and we can't raise our kids in a world where the lowest common denominator has the highest payoff. That's an unacceptable standard. I got an 8-year-old boy, and he doesn't understand this person who's leading this country. He doesn't understand how it works emotionally. That's incredibly consequential, and I'm sure you have some fans who are going to watch this who are down the rabbit hole. And I'm not a religious person, but I pray for them in my own way, because this bargain isn't worth it.
Not even close. I mean, listen, I'm with you on this. Not even close.
You got people out there. They think the bargain is worth winning on 1 or 2 issues.
Yeah, but it's like called selling your soul. Yes, you want to have things, but when you sell your soul for them, it's never worth it. Unless you don't have a soul.
We're at the peak. We're at the peak of that, and I think I think we need to get back to civility. And look, I'm an independent. I don't want to live in a world where there aren't dissenting views. I think Abraham Lincoln's team of rivals is the golden standard running anything, running a company, running a band, running a show. I mean, the team of rivals is where it's at, and that's how things get better. Is
Yeah,
when
I agree.
come together of
Yeah.
different views. May he rest in peace, John McCain. You know, uh, people like that from the right, and then of course, and I mean a lot of people on the right, like George Will, Colin Powell. I mean, they've spoken their piece, and I admire them. And if William F. Buckley was here, he'd be doing the same thing they are. And I think those
A
are,
lot of people are flying off that ship right about now.
just to contextualize this as a musician, because a lot of people get into this thing, especially in my world, because I tour all over the country, and people get into this thing of, especially now, you're like, well, I don't want to hear who a musician is voting for or tell me who to vote for. And it's like, well, I'm never going to do that. But my industry has been eliminated because of how this pandemic was mishandled.
Yes.
And that's if I had to be a one issue voter right now, it would be the complete failure of the handling of this pandemic. Because what we've learned, and of course this is maddening, but the former leader of the WHO tweeted the other day that mitigation is the only way to get it under control. And if you had real leadership, I mean, America is always we are supposed to lead. And if we had real leadership in the world, we would have been the example of a large nation of how to do mitigation. And if we had done mitigation and control early on, we would have never had the lockdown, and we would have never had to shut down the economy and our industries. And that's the only issue anybody needs to vote on. I'm just speaking for the music industry.
No, I agree. I agree with you, Scott.
I have a lot of problems with this guy, and I have some problems with the Republican Party, and I can deal with them, but I can't deal with him because of my industry. I mean, my industry, the music, if anybody who's watching this wants to hear a show again, you better vote to change leadership.
There's so many other industries that, well, have been devastated in the same fashion, not to mention the 220-something thousand people dead. I mean, you can't just step over this shit, and that's what they're doing.
You had the virus, Scott, right?
Dude, I was never so scared in my life, bro. I'm not, embellishing anything. It was terrible. When you can't fucking get air, what do you do?
Unbelievable.
It's sickening, man. And so I understand that people who haven't experienced that don't understand the magnitude of how devastating this can be. So they don't want it with their mask, not wearing what? Okay, but I did, and I can't have that. I can't just ignore that like that. You know what I mean? When you experience it in that way, you have to kind of be. I tell everybody, I wear the mask. I got a strong antibody. I'm still wearing the mask. I mean, I'm not. Why not? I don't know any better. So always err to the side of safety. And other people, and just have a conscious fucking approach to life. Give a fuck about somebody else.
Yeah, and as we know, because of Bob Woodward. I mean, our leadership knew in February that it was airborne. So,
and how do people take a guy who is as credible as Bob Woodward and just disavow what he gave you on tape? This is what I can't get over. I mean, this guy's puts it out there.
It's a tough situation, and look, I mean, I respect what people want to do with their vote and everything, but I just, for me personally, it's like if people want to see music again, and all the other issues that go with this stuff, there's other social justice issues that have come up. There's a lot of people who go along with what's going on in that party. And then they still want to listen to their Allman Brothers records or God forbid, their Muddy Waters records. And it's like, got a lot of work to do there. There's a lot of fucking work to do there. So that's all I'm saying. I've never seen anything like it. I know a lot of people, like I spend all my time talking to people in their 70s who were around for Nixon, and they all say, I've never seen anything like this in my life. I mean, this combination of the technology and social media with this personality, and I'm hoping we get a change of leadership, and if we don't, well, we'll take it from there.
Yeah, listen, we're coming up on election day, so everybody get out there and vote, and vote with your heart. And I am encouraged, by the way, by the lines and the people that are taking initiative now, early voting around the country like that. It does look like there's some extra enthusiasm, and people are going, not being like nonchalant about it. Like, if I get there, or making excuses, and they're waiting on long lines and, putting up with a lot of shit to get something done. So let's just hope this goes, I think we were agreeing on the direction we'd like it to go, but let's hope it goes that way.
Yeah,
but everybody get out and vote.
Well, thanks for having me, brother.
Scott, listen, thank you very much, man. I'm always grateful, but I really hope we can get something solved and get you back in front of people and doing your thing, and, getting your music out there and your message and your energy, man. It's good. Everybody needs it.
Well, I go, if that's what you want, there's only one thing to do. Because if we don't get that change, I don't think you're going to see my industry coming back in this country
for quite a while. You're right. All right, buddy. Listen, all the best to you. We'll be in touch, and thanks again, man.
Thank you, Scott. It's always great to see you, bro.
The pleasure's always mine.